Harlan Fear on your left, Brian Braun-Duin on your right. It's Is It Drake's Jeskai Control. Our first round of Standard. To note, we will be announcing our Gold Rush Mythic Madness winner at the conclusion of this lovely round of Magic.
Yeah, I just want to say, one of the strengths of the combination of Nimazet, Parrot, and Dive Down is that Nimazet is uncounterable. One of the easier ways to interact with expensive creatures is to counter them, but cards like Nimazet, Carnage Tyrant, you cast them, they're going to resolve. Nimazet doesn't have hexproof, though, so one of the easiest ways to get a huge advantage with Nimazet is by protecting it. Harlan, a little more all-in with his Drakes, and he has a lot more targets for said Dive Down, so he is, I believe, 3 of them?
He's got 3.
Yeah, 3 Dive Down in Harlan's Is It Drake's deck, so he's not playing around. And I think that might actually give him the edge here. Although 4 copies of Nimazet from BBD's Jeskai Control deck might be a little too much for Harlan to deal with.
Well, these players going to get ready here for game number 1. If we have time to jump to our backup match, we of course will. Our standard format right now, Guilds Ravnica Standard, very dynamic, but this is kind of the last big weekend for the format because Ravnica Allegiance is almost here, man.
I mean,
excited for that?
It'll be here in a flash. We got,
right?
We got, I think there's like one GP later this year, but it's like a modern GP, I want to say.
Well, there's Portland this weekend, which is modern, and then Vancouver.
Look, when we're here at the Invitational,
yeah,
we do not mention other broadcasts.
Do we not do that? Do we?
No.
Do we act like other things don't exist?
Yes.
Yeah, that's nope.
Nope.
It's gonna be a no from me.
Okay.
I guess we shouldn't mention that Brian's world champion then, because that happened somewhere else.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Nah, he is a one-time Open champion, Brian.
That's correct. That's correct. Because that happened somewhere else, and people probably don't know that. So, congrats, Brian. You're a one open win.
It was a secret open.
It was a secret open. Yeah. It was in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah. He beat Steve Rubin in the finals.
Oh, yeah. That was
people don't forget.
No, I forget. I didn't forget. Steve Rubin lost his modern deck that weekend.
That's tough right there.
It was living end.
Steve Rubin, Pro Tour champion. Can't talk about that. Let's go.
No. Steve Rubin,
let's go.
Random second place finisher
that's
Star
right.
City Games.
Wow.
Secret open.
Brian starts off with a Sacred Foundry into a Clifftop Retreat and a treasure map. We'll go to Harlan Fear, who's got an island, Sulphur Falls, and Discovery. Discovery half of Discovery Dispersal. Yeah,
this is actually one of the better starts for the Jeskai Control deck in this matchup. A card like Treasure Map is very comparable to something like Azor's Gateway or Search for Ascanta in that it continually filters your draw while pushing you towards a big advantage once you're able to transform it. In this scenario, BBD looks like he's missing land drops, so it might not be enough.
Yeah, not too surprising, right, with the lands that he started with. You saw him start off with 2 red-white lands, no blue lands, play a treasure map, activate the treasure map on upkeep, scry to the bottom. Not too surprising to see him miss his land drop there, unfortunately for Brian, as Harlan's going to do a little discovery action once again after playing a land. Brian's going to do a little treasure map action here on the upkeep. Top card is going to stay. So it's got to be a land. It's a Sulphur Falls. So land number 3 activated. However, here's some of the appeal treasure map, right? You're missing your land drops, but you're building towards something that's going to provide mana.
Yeah, I mean, not only does it add a land that sticks around, but you get a burst of 3 mana immediately, which in turn pays for the 3 mana you put into it to activate it. And that's it, and that lets you play some big explosive thing to catch up.
It's an Enigma Drake here from Harlan Fear, and he's got to dive down to protect it. Brian is going to play an Opt, so he will take a look at the top card. It becomes the bottom card, and now he will draw a card. He's picked up an island. Now he'll untap. We'll see if he wants to actually activate the treasure map here on his upkeep or not, now that he has a land to play in his hand. I'm sure he's asking Harlan how big is that stinking Enigma Drake. It's a 5-power creature right now. You see 5 spells in the graveyard.
Now, if Brian has something like, he has 2 copies of Negate and 2 copies of Syncopate in his deck.
Okay.
If he doesn't use the treasure map, he can just play like a Lava Coil naturally and still counter it with the Negate or Syncopate. It doesn't allow him to flip his treasure map this turn, but it's not imperative that he does so. He really just doesn't want to burn treasures right now if he doesn't have to, I believe.
Well, he's going to transform the treasure map on his upkeep. He's got 3 treasures on the battlefield to go along with the treasure cove now, so a little card drawing engine. Treasure map is a really, really, really good card, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when you compare it to Search for Ascanta or Azor's Gateway, Search for Ascanta generates card advantage. Azor's Gateway generates mana advantage. And Treasure Cove actually generates both. You can choose to use the Treasure Coves as card draw, which is really huge sometimes. But in a lot of scenarios, you're just going to go for a Nimazet with protection backup like 2 turns earlier than you should be able to.
So we had a little interaction there, folks. We had on Harlan's upkeep, Brian fires off a Justice Strike. Harlan says, dive down, protected. Brian says, negate your dive down, your Drake is dead. So now we're in Harlan's first main phase. He's going to chart a course. So he'll draw 2 cards and discard 1, which means future Drakes are going to continue to get larger as Beacon Bolt's placed into the graveyard, and Harlan will play an island and pass the turn back. But Brian is out from underneath that. I remember when he missed his first, that third land drop a couple of times?
Oh, yeah. No,
it doesn't look like it anymore.
We're churning, baby. And that's Treasure Map's secondary ability being very powerful and just letting you scry early on to make sure that you hit your land drops. Hitting your land drops is hugely important in decks like Jeskai Control. And not only do you have the big burst of card advantage and mana once you're able to transform the Treasure Cove, but you just get to fix your draws early, and that's awesome.
Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, has now arrived onto the battlefield. Brian's ready to untap 2 lands. He'll untap the Treasure Cove. And it looks like the Sulfur falls as we head back over to Harlan. Harlan's going to play Steam Fence untapped. He's going to go for, I think, the big dragon here in Niv Mizzet. Niv Mizzet is, of course, going to resolve because it's uncounterable, but for how long is it going to last on the battlefield is the question.
Yeah, I mean, Brian does have the option to just tick the Teferi down to deal with it this turn, but he may choose instead to try to remove it permanently via a second Justice Strike or some sort of sweeper effect, just so that Harlan doesn't just cast it in the next few turns. The way that the Izzet deck is built, more than likely Harlan's going to be able to play something that draws a card and find the Nimazet again. Maybe not enough mana to cast it next turn, but definitely the turn after that.
Brian going to do a little manipulation there on the end step, opt, and then crack a treasure to draw a card via the Treasure Cove. Niv Mizzet, you said in the pregame show the most powerful card in Standard is getting tucked away by what I believe is the most powerful card in Standard.
Yeah, but it's not dead.
It's not dead.
He has to deal with it again. Either, if Harlan has like land opt, he can just cast it again next turn.
True.
If he doesn't have land opt, he's going to cast it the turn after that.
Let's see what Brian wants to do now. Looks like he might be going towards Karn.
Love it.
A little surprised to see this in the deck, I think, as he's going to reveal a couple of cards here, Ionize and Steam Vents. How do you feel about Karn in this metagame and in this deck?
I mean, it makes a lot of sense with the treasure maps turning into Treasure Cove. You have a lot of random artifacts just kind of lying around, so you can turn the -2 ability of Karn into a real win condition. Normally, if you're not playing something like Treasure Map, I don't think that Karn is all that great. It's just this like card advantage engine that you don't really need because you already have things like Teferi or Expansion Explosion to do that role for you.
Well, we're going to do a little shock here to take care of Teferi. So one Planeswalker is taken care of. Harlan will play an island and pass the turn back. But Brian's still got an active Planeswalker here in Karn. And now another copy of Treasure Map. And what's so nice about Treasure Map, I must say, as we watch this game continue to unfold, is pretty good multiples.
Oh, yeah,
you
absolutely.
don't mind drawing another copy.
Yeah, second copy is often just as good as the first because once you flip the second copy, it gives you 3 treasures, and then your first Treasure Cove is untapped to go ahead and like instantaneously draw a card off of the 3 fresh treasures.
Karn also showing some of its power here now too by giving Brian an Ionize, so Brian's got a counterspell in his hand for a little bit of protection, and well, the first Teferi got taken care of. I'm not sure the second one will be handled though, as that's going to resolve. It's going to go up, I imagine, and it will. And so now it's time to draw a card and eventually untap a couple of lands. Seems like Brian's in the driver's seat here, Todd.
Yeah, I think so. But don't get fooled here. This Nimazet from Harlan has to be dealt with in some way or another. Harlan drew an opt. That means he can find the Nimazet right now and cast it. Brian's only real way to deal with it is to minus the Teferi. And if he does that, Harlan's going to shock it. So he needs to find a way to actually deal with it. If he doesn't, there's a chance that no matter how many Planeswalkers he plays, no matter what he does, the cards drawn via Nimazet on Harlan's side of things just take over the game from a spot where Brian should not remotely come close to losing.
Well, Brian is going to make sure things get a little bit easier for him. He's going to start by opting, now he'll Treasure Map, and then he'll use Treasure Cove. That's a lot of end-of-turn effects. Pretty good here for BPT, as he is going to look at a new grip of cards, feeling pretty good. There's a few things better than scrying and drawing a bunch of cards in a game of Magic, man.
Oh, absolutely. Harlan here could have main phased the opt to find the Nimizet, but he knows that Brian is just going to use his Ionize to counter it to keep the Nimizet from coming into play a turn faster. Instead, waiting to draw the Nimizet and having the as an option to cast and drawing an extra card off of the Nimizet once it's on the battlefield.
A little bit of a humor has arrived in this game. The reveals are Syncopate and Sailor of Means. Sailor of Means, not a card that sees a ton of play. I know Ben Friedman has written about that card some, and some players did play that card at Pro Tour. Guilds of Ravnica, thank you. But I'm surprised to see it in Brian's deck here this weekend.
So it has a good bit of synergy with Treasure Cove.
Yeah.
It's also one of Jeskai very few ways to proactively interact with an Adanto Vanguard. Having 4 toughness is a pretty big deal as long as they don't have Benash Marshall. It contains their early aggression quite well. In this scenario, Sailor Means also lets you ramp into Teferi a turn faster, which is great. And it provides you with a treasure not only to make cards minus better, but also to just make Flip Treasure Cove better.
All right, well, there's a Sailor of Means. Brought a treasure along with it. Teferi's untapping a couple of lands. Brian will discard a copy of Steam Vents. We'll head back over to Harlan. Harlan's going to draw his Niv Mizzet that he already knows is there because of the Teferi Tuck. But look at the battlefield that Niv Mizzet's got to try to clean up. Look at the battlefield with Teferi on 6, Karn on 6. Sailor of Means, okay, not so much there. Treasure, and then the treasure map. And now Harlan's going to play an Opt. Looks like Opt is going to resolve. So Harlan's going to scry 1.
Draw a card first.
Draw a card first because of the Niv Mizzets, and then he'll get the scry, pardon me. He also gets to ting something. He'll ting Teferi down to 5. And now he'll scry 1.
Yeah, so all of the spells in Harlan's deck that say draw a card effectively draw 2 cards and deal 2 damage. It's just huge. And it's something that Brian's going to have a really tough time dealing with. I'm telling you, he only has 1 copy of Justice Strike left in his deck. He has 1 in the graveyard already cast earlier. And the rest of his deck is just like counter spells, planeswalkers, and like lava coils. You know, he could double up with like 2 Deafening Clarions or a Clarion and a lava coil, but that's still going to give Harlan a refresher of like 4 or 5 cards, you know, for a single Nimizet, and he can just find another one.
The thing I like that Harlan did here is he dealt 4 damage to Teferi, which means Teferi can't tuck it away. I like that. Get it out of range of being tucked away, and Niv Mizzet's going to try to catch him up all by itself. Now that's a pretty tall task for the big dragon to do, but it's one of the few cards that could actually do it in the format.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I think Niv Mizzet is the best card in the Standard. It is the only thing in this scenario that can face down a Karn at 6, a Teferi at 6, a Flip Treasure Cove, a treasure map that's about to flip into a Treasure Cove, and Brian discarding the hand size, and he's not out of the game.
No, he's not out of the game
You
yet.
think a Teferi could have done that?
You make a good point. You make a good point there. Negate's going to be placed under Karn. A land is added to Brian's hand. Brian does have a copy of Deafening Clarion in hand. Looks like a Lava Coil too. So it looks like he'll be able to double up to take care of this thing. He's going to start by drawing a card with Teferi. Picked up a copy of Glacial Fortress. And yeah, Brian is, boy, that hand is really full.
Yeah.
This is one of those times where if you're Brian, I'm trying to take a look. Actually, you have the deck list in front of you. Expansion Explosion. I don't think he's playing any.
2 copies.
Okay, 2 copies. That's a clean answer to it too.
Yeah, he has quite a bit of mana to deal with it. Now the thing is, like, yeah, he can kill it. He can double up on spells and kill it. Harlan is keeping the Teferi pretty low, while also drawing a bunch of cards. Like both Ops he cast drew an additional card, and both cards Brian cast drew an additional card. So now Harlan can just piece together something that might actually let him come back from this.
Yeah, I mean, Harlan's got a long way to go. But Niv is going to die finally. And now, oh yeah. Oh yeah, get in there, Pirate. Sailor of Means feeling frisky, going to deal a point of damage. Brian will play a Sulphur Falls as his land for the turn. Harlan will cross that off of his checklist of cards he's keeping track of that he's seen from Brian. Thanks to old Karn, Scion of Urza. And now Brian's going to untap a couple of lands here from the Teferi, and that's it. So, all right, I'm with you on the Niv now a little bit here. Here's the thing I'm worried about. Harlan's only got 2 Nivs in his main deck, which means he's got 1 left.
Should have done that. Should have played 4.
So he needs to find the other one because that's his best way of getting back in the game. Shock Teferi, okay, that problem's taken care of, but if you can see Brian's hand like we can, he has another Teferi.
Yeah, I mean, that's terrifying when that resolves because you know Harlan knows Brian has an Ionize.
Mm-hmm.
Brian could choose to try to save his Teferi. Nah.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I'm good. That resolves.
Yeah.
So now here's Treasure Map.
How many copies of Treasure Map is Harlan playing?
He's playing 2.
That's something you don't see a lot in the Izzet Drake decks, even the ones that play Nimzet, just because you want to have a high density of instants and sorceries to make both Enigma Drake and Crackling Drake better. So interesting that he thinks it's good enough to just put into this very spell-heavy deck.
He's going to go to Discovery Dispersal now. The Discovery half of the card. The third time we've seen that from him. Ooh, is this the spell that Brian's going to ionize? This is a little bit interesting. Yeah, he will. So he'll ionize here.
Yeah, there's a good chance that Harlan just doesn't cast anything else this turn if Brian lets the Discovery resolve.
This will be Crackling Drake. Brian's going to scry with Treasure Map in response. Top card will go to the bottom, and now he'll have 4 total treasures. As Treasure Map transforms into Treasure Cove, he'll activate his active Treasure Cove, draw a card. Does he have an answer to Crackling Drake? He does not. At least something he can play at instant speed. So the Drake's in, Harlan will draw a card, and that'll be Harlan's whole turn, which, not a bad turn, but I think Brian's turn is going to be better.
I mean, we'll see. Brian's deck is very reactive, so even if his turn is not necessarily better, he could just have the answer to everything already locked up in response to whatever Harlan actually is able to cobble together.
At the very least, we know this, and I think Harlan probably knows this now based off of how Brian played his last turn, which was not ionizing Shock and ionizing something else, that Brian has another Teferi.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
The end.
Now, is this Teferi going to be the game winner? We'll have to see. This is his third one of the game.
Honestly, Teferi is not super good against any form of Izzet Drakes that I've encountered, simply because every time you tuck something away, the Izzet Drakes deck can usually find it on the next turn if they want to. And even if, you tuck something like Nimzet, it's just going to come back and do some real damage. Things like Crackling Drake will still draw a card.
And this is the point you brought up, right? When he tucked it away, you were like, well, this is still going to be a problem.
Yeah.
It's still going to do something. And to your credit, that was actually the case. Niv-Mizzet came down. It had an effect on the game. It took care of a Teferi, so on and so forth. So I can see what you're saying about Teferi. Still good because it's Teferi, but not like game over after being on the battlefield for a couple of turns. Mm-hmm. That makes total sense to me as we watch this game continue to unfold. This is a third copy of Treasure Map here from Brian. Again, continues to be really, really good in multiples. Like, really good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think just being able to generate more treasures, just hitting more total mana, all just working like clockwork.
All right, here we go back to Harlan. Looks like he's going to activate Treasure Map on the upkeep. It's time to scry. Top card going to go to the bottom here for Harlan. He's got 1 counter on the Treasure Map, 2 more to go until he can transform that. Okay. All right.
Ooh, baby.
That's what the doctor ordered there, Todd. He's going to play Niv-Mizzet again.
Yep.
Uncounterable, of course, so it's going to resolve. And now the question is, if you're Brian, do you respond to this so that none of the nonsense happens?
So there's a problem here. The problem is that his answer for Crackling Drake was settle the wreckage. So if he wants to actually deal with the Crackling Drake, he's going to get hit. He's going to give Harlan a card and deal a point of damage to something. Probably the Teferi.
Okay.
If I had to guess, that Teferi's dying this turn.
Okay. Brian's going to activate Treasure Map, put a counter on it. Top card goes to the bottom. Now he'll activate Treasure Cove. He'll sacrifice one of those treasures, draw a card. Number of treasures he has now is 2. All right, so now Niv is in, and now Harlan's going to come in and go after Teferi.
I feel like we're going to see a settle here. Brian still has backup with Negate off of the 2 treasure tokens up top. Ooh. So, wow. Wow.
Drew spell pierce.
Oh, wait, no, that's not it. That ain't it, Chief.
Because of the Negate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you also could just pay 2.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, so this is interesting, right? If you haven't paid 2, he does lose those treasures. Is that worth anything to you?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think you're fine just getting the land, and then he can play like opt here. Brian might negate, and no, Brian's not going to negate the opt because it's just going to let him draw another card with Niv-Mizzet and shoot something for 1. Brian wants to basically not cast the negate unless he absolutely has to. I'm curious what he does here.
Chart of course is where Harlan's going to start.
Yeah.
He's going to ping Teferi. Now he'll draw a couple more cards. Dragon Skull Summit and Enigma Drake. So Brian's already said, okay, I've put it down to 2 for you already with all your pings. So the follow-up is Steam Fence untapped. Harlan's going to fall down to 13.
Yeah, not discarding, of course, because he did hit the required attack with the Crackling Drake.
Now here's Opt. Trigger, ting something, and now draw a card.
It's weird. It's almost like I said
You shut your mouth.
You
shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
Wow. Just a classic Limp Bizkit. Or no, that was a
Linkin
Park reference.
No!
Linkin Park reference.
That was a Wedding Crashers reference, first of all.
Shut up when I'm talking to you.
Yes. Thank you. One step. That's not the riff for the song.
That's ninth grade all over again.
You are ruining Linkin Park right now.
You know I've done that at karaoke before, right?
I believe it, actually.
And I'm trying not to scream. All right, we're not going to talk about that anymore.
All right. Director coming in our ear with some Linkin Park hate here that you guys can't hear. I don't like it. Let's go back to Brian now, who's – I can't believe I'm saying this with all these cards that he has in his hand. Has to figure out how to solve this problem.
Dude, that's weird, right? Weird, right? He was like 35 cards ahead, 25 mana ahead, and just might lose. just might lose.
All right, we got Opt. Oh, hello. Hello.
Even if he plays his own Nimazet and uses a bunch of card draw to kill Harlan's Nimazet, Harlan will just get to draw 5 cards.
Yeah, that's true. All right. You've obviously played quite a few games of this standard format.
Really?
That's for sure.
Nah. I've only played every deck through at least 3 leagues.
These Niv Mizzet battles are interesting. All right, Brian's tapping a lot of mana. Okay. Boom, baby.
Yeah, he should play a second Nimazet and see what happens.
Let's see what happens now. Brian is going to play an Opt. Ooh. So Harlan gets to ting something.
Yeah, I don't think Harlan's going to be able to kill Brian's Nimazet here, which is going to be problematic because Brian gets to draw a card for every spell cast, plus if the spell draws a card, it deals an extra damage. So the Opt is going to deal 2 to the Nimazet, whereas Harlan's is only going to deal 1 to Brian's.
Okay.
So I think he's better off just putting all the damage at Karn and trying to get Brian to mess up and maybe kill the Karn.
So here's my question now. How does Harlan get a Niv Mizzet off the battlefield?
No, he can't. Or no, he has a Beacon Bolt in the graveyard, but
okay, yep, good call. But Brian's got the negate, right?
He does. And
so
yeah.
we have a little back and forth there.
There was a turn earlier where I thought that there was a good chance Harlan actually should have discarded a Shock instead of the Beacon Bolt, just because most of the Jeskai decks play a ton of Nimazets now, and it's one of your only ways to actually deal with it. And there's a good chance that the game's going to go long enough where you need to kill 2, or the first one's going to get countered. But he ended up using that Shock pretty usefully to kill a Teferi, so, I can't really fault him for that decision.
All right, Brian will discard a Sacred Foundry on the end step, and now we're going to go back over to Harlan, who's got a whole swath of lands, and he will not activate Treasure Map on the upkeep. He will simply draw a card, picked up a copy of Crackling Drake. So both these players have a boatload of cards in the grip as we continue to navigate through game number 1, which is a pretty lengthy one so far. You see the clock there, 28:45, and continuing to tick down.
I think Harlan's been losing this game for 22 minutes, and I think he's going to continue losing this game for another 10.
Well, it felt like he was coming back, right?
Yeah, it always kind of does. And then you realize that now both Nimazets are gone. None of your threats are overly consequential. He doesn't have the combo element in his deck with maximized velocity. So he's playing a more control-y version using Dive Down and Spell Pierce to protect his threats. He has treasure maps, 4 copies of Lava Coil. So he doesn't have that big burst of damage that he could kill Brian with if Brian tapped out. And every card that he casts from now on, this not a creature, is going to let Brian draw a card and deal a damage.
Like this Beacon Bolt that he's trying to resolve right now.
Yeah, Brian, I bet, really wishes that he had a Dive Down right now.
Maybe. I think he can win the fight here with negate.
Even if he does, I'm almost positive he has a second copy of Nimazet in hand.
Beacon Bolt, the old sorcery.
It doesn't matter.
Sorcery speed damage spell. It's going to do a lot of damage in this kind of deck, obviously, and has Jumpstart, so you can discard it to various things, like Chart a Course or Surveil it with Discovery Dispersal. So we're going to have a little battle over this Beacon Bolt. Brian, of course, drawing some cards here because Harlan is casting spells. And now Brian will sacrifice a treasure to draw a card. And now here is Spell Pierce once. Actually, yeah, he's doing that. And now he's going to play Spell Pierce while Harlan to take care of the negate. And now Niv is dead. Okay.
Yeah. The Beacon Bolt's gone. He's only got one in the main deck. He can maybe double up with like a Shock Lava Coil, just like Brian did earlier. But again, that's going to just let Brian draw a bunch of cards. So it's give and take. Mostly take for Brian's side.
Harlan going to play Crackling Drake. That'll resolve. He'll, of course, draw a card from that uncommon flyer. And now will Harlan also play his copy of Enigma Drake? That's what he's weighing, and he will. Now, I think it's pretty safe to say these Drakes are probably lethal, Todd.
Oh, I mean, maybe one is not quite lethal, but both are definitely lethal. But Brian, with Harlan tapped out, shows him the Expansion Explosion, and that's good for approximately 36 damage.
Well, Brian Braun-Duin's going to win game number one here over Harlan. Fear. Jeskai Control up a game over Is It Drakes, and you see the sideboards here are pretty diverse.
Warboss! He did it! He read the article! Lead the Warboss! Let's go!
We'll get to Brian in just a moment. We're going to start with Harlan, who's got 2 Entrancing Melody, 2 Ral Is It Viceroy, 2 Shivan Fire, and a whole bunch of one-ofs in Disdainful Stroke, Spell Pierce, Negate, Searcherous Kanta, Fiery Cannonade, another copy of Beacon Bolt, Murmuring Mystic, another Niv Mizzet, that'll be the third in the 75, and then a Singleton Star of Extinction. Todd, you're obviously very familiar with Is It strategies. What do we like here and why?
So it's really this weird dance of whether or not you should leave in removal spells in this matchup to deal with something like Legion Warboss, which is why Legion Warboss is so good. So Harlan has this decision, like, do I leave in shocks? Probably not, but maybe. Lava Coil, I think, is a definite cut. So you have roughly 10 cards or so, that you can side out pretty easily. I think Ral Is It Viceroy is very good. Entrancing Melody is, like, weirdly maybe nuts, because if you steal your opponent's Niv Mizzet, the game just ends on the spot. So, I don't know. The Disdainful Stroke is a good way to handle things like Teferi and Karn, but there are times where it will get stuck in your hand, so I'm not 100% on it, but I think it's okay. It's good enough to come in. The Spell Pierce, definitely. Negate, definitely. Search for a Kanta, definitely. Murray Miss It, Beacon Bolt, Niv Mizzet, all coming in. Just get all the removal out of there, and if your opponent draws an early Legion Warboss, just chalk it up to variance.
All right, well, speaking of Legion Warboss, Brian's got 3 of them. He's got 3 Sealaways, 2 Ixalan's Binding, 2 Invoke the Divine, 2 Star of Extinction, a Cleansing Nova, a Negate, and a Lyra Dawnbringer. I imagine the Negate's going to come in, but talking about Legion Warboss in this particular matchup, if it's something that Brian will want.
Okay, so a while back I wrote an article all about initiative in control mirrors, and the way that you win the game is by playing something on turn 2 or 3 that starts to force your opponent's hand and dictates the pace of the game over the next few turns, whether that's Search for Azcanta, Azor's Gateway, Treasure Map, or even something like Legion Warboss. Is completely up to you, as long as you're doing something that puts your opponent in a bad spot.
Okay.
I think Legion Warboss is probably the most potent of any of these because it punishes all your opponents who board out all the removal spells. It's especially good in the mirror match where they won't have something like Enigma Drake or Crackling Drake, but Brian's going to be playing the control role for the most part, and he's still going to have a bunch of Lava Coils and Justice Strikes in his deck to take care of these blockers and just let Legion Warboss kind of rumble in for lethal. In any matchup where Niv Mizzet is a huge factor, I think Legion Warboss is going to be good because it can just close the game before your opponent's Niv Mizzet actually ends up mattering. Aside from that, I like Ixalan's Binding in the matchup. I think it's really good. The Cleansing Nova can maybe come in as just a clean answer to an opposing Niv Mizzet, or if Harlan lands a Drake or 2 early on, it plays around Dive Down, which I think is important. And then Lyra, Dawnbringer, and Negate, I think, can both come in. One as a flyer and one as a way to just counter one as like a Ral Is It Viceroy or something.
All right, well, plenty of options here for both players. Todd just helped us go over them. He knows Standard very well from Versus Live, and, of course, playing plenty of MTG Arena and Magic Online. So we'll see how this second game unfolds here in just a moment. But first, a quick word from our friends over at Ultimate Guard. Game number 2 about to be underway here between Harlan Fear and Brian Braun-Duin. That Ammonite Anti-Theft Backpack will be available at Star City Games and other retailers February 1st from our friends over at Ultimate Guard. Shout out to them for the awesome backpack that's on the way. Is it Drake's and Jeskai Control is what we're watching here. A very fun, entertaining first game. However, that first game took a while, and now the clock is starting to work itself into the equation here for definitely for Harlan Fear, but also for Brian Braun-Duin as well. As this game, let's say it'll start with about 21 minutes, and that's a lot for 2 sideboard games. And Harlan, I suppose, can win a fast game.
Yeah, I think if it goes to Game 3, there will likely be less than 10 minutes on the clock. And I think that hugely favors Is That Drake's versus BBD's control deck. Though, with the treasure map turbo draw, putting in a Nimizet early on, Brian does have the capability to win games quickly.
Search for his Kanta is where Harlan starts things off. He's going to put the Crackling Drake into the graveyard and play an Enigma Drake. Brian's going to very quickly untap that Steam Vents. Is it the Legion War Boss? Okay, so this is his ability. This is a way to steal a game. This is exactly what you talked about. Though Harlan is off to a pretty nice start, the Goblin Token's going to enter the fray, and we're going to head back over to Harlan. Harlan is going to take a look at the top card with Search for his Kanta once again.
Yeah, notably 0 power on the Enigma Drake, which will in turn not eat the Goblin Token. So even if Harlan's able to take care of the Legion War Boss, Brian still has that 1/1 left over.
Steam Vents is going to enter the battlefield untapped here for Harlan. There you see the Goblin Soldier in Legion War Boss, 2/2 with Mentor. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 red Goblin creature token. That token gains haste until end of turn and attacks this combat if able. So not all Goblin tokens have to attack like Goblin Rabble Master. It's a little bit different card. They are similar, but they do have their differences. One where they are similar, though, is they can take a game and win it very, very quickly. Yeah. And that's what Brian's trying to do here.
Yeah, I mean, if you'll see Harlan actually end up discarding a Disdainful Stroke. In this scenario, Brian has initiative. Cards like Disdainful Stroke, any counterspell in general, is not ideal. You want things that are proactive, that can change the way that the board is shaped. The battlefield dominated right now by Legion War Boss on Brian's side.
Though that could shift pretty quickly. And the reason for that is I think the most powerful card on this battlefield, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is Search for his Kanta. The War Boss isn't bad, but it's not overwhelmingly dominant right now, right?
Okay, if everything stays static and the game goes on for like 6, 7, 8 more turns or whatever, the Search for Iskanta will be more inherently powerful than the Legion War Boss.
Okay.
However, if Brian ever draws something like Lava Coil to take care of the blocker, like here, Harlan is very obviously playing a follow-up blocker or has a removal spell. There's no in-between. And if Brian just like untaps, plays Lava Coil on the Enigma Drake, and has like a negate backup for the dive down or the negate or whatever, he just gets to turn 5 damage sideways immediately. And the game just changes like that. Search for Iskanta is no longer a relevant Magic card.
Sure. That makes sense. So if you're Brian, you're looking for a removal spell to kill the Enigma Drake and be able to interact with a potential interaction spell, like you mentioned, dive down or negate. Brian's going to attack again, of course. Goblin has to. And the Enigma Drake will block. Brian's going to play Glacial Fortress and pass the turn back. So Harlan's going to take a look at the top card once again with Search for his Kanta. He'll take it. It's a mountain. A little surprising. Well, I guess not that surprising he wants to land here because
Crackling Drake.
Yeah, he wants to play Crackling Drake with counterspell backup.
Yeah, I think Brian probably has something like Teferi or Justice Strike here, neither of which are super safe to cast. Harlan's been representing Negate for quite a while now. And if Brian taps out for that, there's a good chance he just gets turned on immediately.
Harlan's Drake's not particularly big, just 2 power creatures right now. Brian going to make a Goblin block with Enigma Drake here, will Harlan. Brian has land 6, and does he have Niv Mizzet number 1? He does.
There it is. Red, red, blue, blue, blue. I thought it would be a lot harder to cast, honestly.
You would think so.
Oh, ooh. What's that?
All
Dueling
right.
Niv Mizzets?
All right, this again, huh?
Well, unfortunately for Harlan, Brian does have a Teferi, which will win that battle. And I'm pretty sure Harlan has Negate, not Dive Down at the ready.
I think it's not Dive Down or Spell Pierce, I believe. I think we're going to find out either way here in just a moment because we have no choice but to do so.
Yeah, Brian tanking on where to do the 1 damage right now. My guess he's going to target Crackling Drake. Or he might target the face, actually. There's a good chance that Brian just doesn't attack here with the Nimizet and doesn't do anything other than Teferi minus.
He's going to target the Crackling Drake, so 1 damage dealt. And it looks like a little bit more to go. 5 mana being tapped. It is Teferi. And Brian has played a land, so he's able to play around Spell Pierce. So that means the hero Dominaria has resolved. Niv Mizzet, kindly leave.
Yep, and now if Harlan wants to interact with the Teferi, the Warboss, or the Niv Mizzet, that's going to give Brian free cards all over the place.
Niv is starting to run away with this game, folks. Legion Warboss, I would say, not dominant in this particular game. It did cause Harlan to play a certain way, right? That it didn't get to attack, things like that, but not really dominant. Now there's Justice Strike too, so Brian, he might have it all here.
Wee.
As he's going to deal a little bit of damage there, finish off the Crackling Drake. And now all Harlan has left is Enigma Drake, which is not great on this battlefield. Here comes some tokens, easy block there.
Yeah, Brian playing it super safe here, not attacking with Niv Mizzet. A single shock plus a block from the Enigma Drake would spell lethal for that Niv Mizzet.
And there's no reason to risk it.
Correct.
No reason at all. Brian is in such an advantageous position as Harlan is trying to build a larger Drake. But now Harlan's only way to get out of this is start casting spells, and, well,
that's a yikes.
We know how that goes. He'll start with an Opt. Trigger. Draw, will BBD, and he'll also deal a damage. All right, maybe Niv Mizzet is the best card. Maybe.
It's great.
Maybe it's the best card.
I'm actually a little surprised last turn that Brian didn't just Justice Strike the Niv Mizzet.
Okay.
Because cleanly answering it is pretty important. But he's taken such a huge advantage in this game that it's possible he's just trying to push all of his advantages from every side as much as possible. But if he was going to do that, I would have expected him to attack last turn with the Niv Mizzet.
Enigma Drake is going to have a point of damage dealt to it. Well, let's make it 2, so 2 more to go.
Oh, I think he drew Ixalan's Binding. Goodness.
Yeah, so that was the card I was a little actually scared of from Brian's sideboard. Ooh. It's a clean answer to Niv Mizzet and future Niv Mizzets, and if Harlan can't
Niv Mizzet's babies, children, it just gets the lineage.
If Niv Mizzet can't be played by Harlan, I'm not sure how he's supposed to win. That's the problem. Yeah, and he's going to concede the game right now because Niv Mizzet is gone for good. So Brian Braun-Duin is going to win this game and match over Harlan Fear 2-0. Just